On today's edition of the Thrive Time Show, we interview County Commissioner Randy Prude. Randy Prude is a petroleum engineer and a real estate investor. He is a diligent man and not a crazy person. And on today's show, he explains why COVID-19 is a planned attempt to kill America. Is COVID-19 a planned attempt to kill America? Well, unfortunately, after you hear these facts, I think you will agree. However, it is the truth that shall set us free. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, it is my interview with Randy Prude.
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrive Time Show.
Now, 3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here.
Yes, and yes! Thrive Nation, it is a very special occasion because we have an incredible guest on today's show who happens to be a petroleum engineer / county commissioner in Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. The man, the myth, the legend, Randy Prude. Welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
Hello, Clay. How are you doing today?
Brother, I'm excited that you're here. I was first introduced to you here by Dr. Richard Bartlett, who is a doctor who's highly regarded, who was a top advisor for Governor Perry of Texas for 7 consecutive years. And he said, you have to have my friend Randy Prude on the show. But I'm assuming our folks listening from San Diego and Canada and Florida, all over the world, they maybe don't know your background. So previous to becoming county commissioner in Texas, what were you doing?
Well, so I've lived in Midland, Texas all my life. I'm now 68 years old.
Wow.
Went to school at Texas A&M, Texas Tech, got a degree in chemical engineering, went to work for Exxon. I realized I didn't really want to work for anybody else. My own company in 1980 and did oil and gas, and eventually bought a bunch of empty buildings because in Midland, Texas, every time the oil bus goes down, so does the price of real estate. So I started buying empty buildings with my partner and business partner, and then we then about 22 years ago, a lady was sitting by me at a basketball game, says, "Why don't you run for county commissioner?" And I said, "Sure, what is it?" So I ran for county commissioner, and I've loved it. It is where the rubber meets the road for government. On a local level, you have to learn how to work with the left and the right to get things done for people that help make lives. So for 22 years, I've been helping little old ladies with potholes and problems, and I have had a lot of fun doing it. And then I was so fortunate to meet Dr. Bartlett about 6 months ago, and that's kind of what led me to your introduction.
Now, what is behind you there? It appears as though you have a big framed picture of some kind. Is that a painting? Is that what is that?
Yes, well, about 10 years ago, my wife and I really loved New York City, and we had a lady, an artist we met from Lamesa, Texas, which is just about 60 miles north of here, painted a mural in my entryway in my house. And the mural was of the 1800s with us in top hats and her in a bustle and dress and in a coach going to a theater. So we were kind of nostalgic, and she did such a good job. I said, I want you to paint the gospel in my office, and I want it to take up all the walls. So I have about 22 feet of running mural. There's 3 different pictures. The first mural that you see there is the Garden of Eden, the way God meant for things to be in the beginning. He created everything so beautiful, animals and people getting along with each other. And then right behind that, you'll see right here is the way when man said, "You're not the boss of me," then he decided to take things in his own hand, and then the world got sick with a lot of different kinds of evil. And it's an amazing picture. You ought to, I'd love for you to see it sometime. And then the third picture is the kingdom of heaven restored on earth with the streets of gold and Jesus ruling from his temple and people reconciled, people shaking hands, great, beautiful mansions. I've even got Bambi and Thumper in there since I'm a Disney fan.
Now, there is, Randy, a lot of evil going on in this world right now. You're seeing Antifa in the streets in many American cities. You're seeing corruption at the highest levels. And what I want to zero in on today is some misinformation that seems to be spreading across the nation. Some misinformation. I want to get your take on this as a county commissioner. The United States military told 600,000 people that they had COVID-19. The U.S. military, they said you had 600,000 people were told you guys have COVID-19. The organization TRICARE then came back and said, hey, oops, you didn't have COVID-19. You're seeing the same headlines play out from coast to coast. You're hearing people say all these people are dying with COVID-19, not from COVID-19. They die, and at the time of death, they had COVID-19. There's a lot of misinformation going on. So I just want to get your take. What is your take on why there are there's such information and so many missed case tests, so many inflated numbers of cases and deaths? What's going on with this misinformation?
Well, Clay, actually, I believe the first thing you said was really the true issue here, which is America's in a spiritual battle right now. It's good versus evil, and evil is not stupid, but it uses a lot of what you and I may call useful idiots, people that want to do what's right, but when they hear something that sounds good. And so, when this virus first came about 6 months ago and shut our nation down, one of my business partners has a friend whose daddy is a member of his party, and I won't mention anything else about that, except that the friend, he gave us an email on that very day that said, this is not an accident. This is a weaponized virus that escaped from a lab in Wuhan. And this was before anybody else had started talking about that. And so obviously it's really scary when you think about a bioengineered weapon designed to kill people. But I don't think it was deliberately set loose, because they would not have set it loose on their own people first, I think. Anyway, I hope not.
Well,
from that time until now, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't think a lot of people recognize what you just said, and I want to make sure I'm supplying facts to support what you're saying. You're saying this is a bioengineered weapon, and I want the listeners to know this, and I want the listeners to research this, and please don't trust me, okay? I'll put links on the show notes, but please, folks, do not blindly trust me. This research that Dr. Fauci has been leading in the United States for a long time is called gain-of-function research. And it's where you take a naturally occurring coronavirus and you attempt to increase its transmissibility, which is heavily criticized because it could cause a pandemic. This research was banned from the United States because it involves fetal tissue. So Dr. Fauci's research, gain-of-function research, isn't even possible without abortions. So President Trump banned the use of gain-of-function research. You can't do it anymore in the United States. So the research then moved to Wuhan. And if everybody will do a quick Google search, type this in right now, Dr. Fauci funded the Wuhan lab with American dollars. So if you just type in Dr. Fauci funds the controversial Wuhan lab, Newsweek. This is not tinfoil.com, rightwing.com. This is not conspiracytheory.com. This is Newsweek is reporting this, okay? So Trump bans gain-of-function research, which is not possible without fetal tissue, a.k.a. abortions. So then they move that to China, and that much we know to be true. Now, did China release it on purpose? Was it an accident? We may never know, but this is some evil stuff. And so I want to get your take on this as a believer. Do you take issue with research that involves using fetal tissue?
I don't want to be standing next to the person on Judgment Day in front of Jesus when I don't want to stand beside somebody who's participated in that kind of research. That has got to be one of the most gruesome. I mean, that is just beyond gruesome. Just the act of abortion itself is amazing. I don't think there would be, you know what, Clay, I don't think abortion would live any longer if every member of the left and people with so-called freedom of choice were to watch the silent screen that I saw back in the 70s. It showed a picture of a baby screaming as he was being aborted in the womb. If you ever saw that, you wouldn't even, you'd get emotional about it. So to answer your question, oh my goodness, the people that are involved in saying that's just a blob of tissue or not a human being, I don't want to be standing next to them, because that is horrible.
And I want to point this out. The reason why I was interested in having you on the show is Dr. Bartlett said, I have a spirit-filled Christian friend who has decided to serve government, and you need to interview him. Now, if he had said, Clay, I got this good friend of mine, and here's the deal. Trump banned his research, so he moved it because Trump banned the fetal tissue research, so he moved it to Wuhan, and he funded it. I wouldn't want to have you on the show for any other purpose than to probably yell at you. Does it make a lot of sense for us as believers to be trusting a guy and Dr. Fauci that funded the Wuhan research that was banned in the United States? What's your take on that?
Well, it's my belief that I have not confirmed this firsthand myself, but it's my belief that there's a great conflict of interest in this Dr. Fauci and remdesivir and any academic doctor who says you guys have to shut down your economy, shut down the world, kill it. I mean, the cure is so much worse than the virus. So anybody that says that and has a patent or an interest in a patent or an interest in the company who has a patent on remdesivir, and that's the only drug I hear locally in Midland, Texas, from my hospital is, yeah, we're going to give them remdesivir. Then I hear people like Dr. Zelenko in New York, Dr. Bartlett,
yep,
Dr. Lozano in Dallas, Dr. Emmanuel in Houston, and many, many other places. When they say all they're doing, and by the way, each one of them has come up with a different kind of a solution to some degree, simply based on they went to bed one night praying, God, help me. When I had my first COVID patients, and this was 6 months ago, when I get my first COVID patient, what do? Each one of them woke up and told me the same story. I've interviewed 2 of them personally and 3 of them vicariously through YouTube. They said, well, they woke up the next day with just a simple thought in their head, look, let's just treat the simple symptoms. If a guy's having trouble breathing, give him budesonide. Let's give him the anti-malaria medicine and just see what happens. And sure enough, hydroxy worked.
Right.
President Trump, our nation should have been on prophylactic hydroxy and budesonide from day one.
Yep.
And we would not have lost the oil price wouldn't have cratered. Our economy wouldn't have cratered. People wouldn't be killing each other. People wouldn't be, everything would be so different had we just listened to President Trump 6 months ago.
Now, Randy, I want to recap this because I want to make sure the listeners, the whole point of this show is to make it actionable. Okay. So first action item we can apply as a result of this show. If you are sick with COVID-19, you have COVID-19, you're sick from COVID-19, you don't feel well as a result of COVID-19, I want everybody there, go on YouTube, or I tell you what, better yet, email me, info@thrivetimeshow.com, info@thrivetimeshow.com, and I will give you a line item list of what Dr. Richard Bartlett recommends. And so far, every doctor I've talked to, we're talking thousands of patients at this point, they've all told me not a single person has died at all when they take the following treatment. It's $237, by the way, if you don't have insurance, okay? It includes budesonide. Some people might call that Pulmicort, but Pulmicort budesonide, okay? And you use a nebulizer to distribute the budesonide and Pulmicort, and you take a Z-Pack. And the whole thing's $237. And I know people personally who were sick who took this treatment and haven't died. So everybody, that's action item number 1. Action item number 2, do not believe anything I've stated, okay? So please go to today's show notes and research it, but I'm putting a link right here. Now, this is going to blow your mind. I'm not sure if you've heard this yet. Remdesivir is a drug that is produced by Gilead Biosciences, which is owned by George Soros, the very man funding the organization Black Lives Matter that has hijacked the phrase and the sentiment Black Lives Matter. George Soros, the same George Soros who was on 60 Minutes unapologetically explaining that he was a Nazi at the age of 14. That George Soros, he's the one who owns Gilead Biosciences that is making remdesivir. Now, this is crazy. When you have COVID-19, it is an upper respiratory disease. And when you get treated with remdesivir, you die of renal failure, liver failure, kidney failure. Many are beginning to say, many doctors are telling me, they're saying, did you know that remdesivir kind of works like a euthanasia drug? And I go, what? As I'm not a doctor. And they say, when you take it, you die. It never made it through clinical trials. And again, I ask you, who owns the patent? China in conjunction with George Soros. So, here, I'm feeling kind of sick with an upper respiratory infection. Okay, why don't we give you some rat poison? Why don't we give you some remdesivir? So, again, praise Jesus for giving Dr. Bartlett and other doctors the discernment. But, folks, for $237, you're not going to die. Point 2, Dr. Fauci would not exist. He wouldn't be relevant without his vaccines, which are made by using fetal tissue, which I, as a Christian, take issue with. Now, point number 3 I want to ask you about. Dr. Scott Atlas from Stanford. So Stanford's top doctor, medical doctor, Dr. Scott Atlas, was recently asked by President Trump to serve on the White House coronavirus task force. His first presentation he did while wearing a purple tie and I put a link to it so our listeners can view this. He says, coronavirus. This is what he says. I'm not. This is not me making this up. He says the deadliness of the coronavirus is less than that of the seasonal flu for children. I want to get your take on this. Rand Paul has said the mortality rate is less than 1 out of 1 million for kids. If you're 18 to 45, it's 10 in 100,000. And that's before Bartlett's treatment. Does it make any sense, sir, to shut down our economy, to eliminate your First Amendment rights, to shutter our schools, to close churches as a result of COVID-19? Does it make any sense at all, sir?
It's only coordinated, in my opinion, by evil.
Yes.
That this has happened to our nation, because it doesn't make any sense at all. In fact, going a step further from the treatment you just mentioned, which I believe would work, if we were to put everybody back together again, practice hygiene all you want to. I'm all for that. But put everybody to get back to work, fly the planes again, get the world going again, and just simply give everybody prophylactically 1-hydroxy 200 milligrams every 2 weeks. Gargle with Listerine, as Dr. Bartlett has told me to do, every day. That kills the majority of the germs in your throat. There's an over-the-counter Rhinocort nose spray that you can spray that kills the receptors in your nose. That has a little bit of that budesonide in it. And of course, I'm not a doctor, but and I've even had my local friends here, but I've spent so much political capital trying to make friends with our doctors and hospitals. And they'll say, well, you're not a doctor. Why are you talking about this stuff? And I said, are you kidding? You don't have to be a chicken to recognize an egg. That kind of, no, they didn't laugh. Nobody laughed. No, regular people laughed. But, I said, try it. What you're doing is telling people to go home when they feel sick and they're scared to death. They go home and eventually 1% or 2%, 10 or whatever the number is, get so sick they can't breathe. They go to the emergency room and then some of them die because of this. So no wonder people are scared. We should start taking these simple treatments that these doctors who have prayed about it and asked for wisdom. I believe they've gotten God's answer.
Think about this, folks, for a second. Think about this. Imagine this. You're in your office now, okay? And imagine that I own businesses, okay? And I know a business, well, all we do is we solve a problem for our ideal and likely buyers in exchange for money. Well, that's all a business is. We solve problems, okay? So imagine this fun example here, Randy. I show up at your office, okay? I show up in one of your big buildings in Midland, and I say, sir, it appears as though you have an infestation problem. There's mice everywhere. I'm talking thousands of mice. And you say, well, can I see it? And I go, no, you can't see it. We just need to shut it down, lock it down, make you stay home. I'm gonna take care of it. And you go, Clay, aren't you the guy that owns the patent on eliminating mice? Aren't you the guy? Yeah. Aren't you the guy? Yeah, I do own an extermination business, but altruistically, I'm just telling you, sir, there's a mice infestation everywhere. I mean, and then you catch me on camera putting mice in your building? I mean, that's what's going on. The very guy that funded the gain of function research that created COVID-19, he's the one who's working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to create a vaccine for the very virus they created. There could not be a bigger conflict of interest ever. I mean, you've been on the planet, it appears to be at least 35 years. Have you ever seen a bigger attempt to kill America's economy? I mean, you've lived through, you've lived through the Cold War. You've lived through these things. Have you ever seen a bigger attack on America than what we're seeing right now?
No. And I'll tell you what else is scary is 8 years ago when our nation elected what I consider to be a forerunner of the Antichrist, and half the nation voted for him, and lots of our children that we've raised up to be Christians bought into the whole silly thing, and nobody understands how come communism takes over nations and how it works. And so anyway, to answer your question, I mean, this is just one day after another of crises that's designed to destroy and take over our world and make it into the one world government. And this is just obvious what's going on.
Now, this is crazy. I spoke to her today, I guess I should say I set up the interview today, and I'll pull it up on my phone because I don't want to misquote, misrepresent, miss anything. I talked to her. Her name is Carol, and Carol is the GOP, Carol Hefner. She is the GOP Oklahoma finance director. So her job is to make sure that the finances of the GOP are not wasted. She told me, this is crazy. She told me that the mayor of Tulsa and actually is being supported, coached, guided by Bloomberg. And I think, wow, that's crazy. You mean the guy who said he's a Republican is being coached, funded by Bloomberg, the super left Bloomberg? And I start doing my research on the old Google machine and on DuckDuckGo.com. By the way, folks, DuckDuckGo.com doesn't filter your searches. I go up there. Sure enough, our Republican mayor is writing an op-ed in the New York Times advocating perpetual lockdowns. He said in the Tulsa World that he's listening to Barack Hussein Obama. He said this in the Tulsa World. I mean, it's amazing how the people have been deceived. Now, I'm a big believer of the book of Ephesians. I love the book of Ephesians. I love it. And it states that Jesus Christ died for our sins, and he rose on the third day, and he is seated at the right hand of Christ, and he gave the body of church the authority over Satan. So we were given authority over Satan. I want to get your take on this about why the left is so fascinated, so obsessed with keeping churches shut down. Why do you think, sir, that the left is so obsessed, Randy, with keeping America's churches closed?
You know what? I'm not sure they deliberately, other than the fact that they hate God and hate the Bible.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they have a coordinated method. I think Satan is behind this whole thing, coordinating it. And if you keep Christians away from each other, we don't bounce good ideas off of each other. We don't pray face to face with each other. All the good things in this world that have been happening because of churches and because of Jesus, is under attack. Yeah, it's just it's a crazy world that we live in, and it's crazy how much hatred there is. I'm just a regular guy in Midland, Texas, and whenever I try to post something about COVID or simple answers, I've been banned from Facebook. I mean, they just eliminate it. They say you've put up false information.
How long have you been banned for? Are you still banned?
No. Only if I post about that subject.
Really?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook all the time with all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I don't. If I post something about, because I'm trying to get all my friends across the world that are friends of mine on Facebook to know their uncle and their mama and their daddy don't have to die. I've already had several friends whose parents have died, including the first person in Midland who died from COVID was one of my pilots on a plane that I'm a partner in, and then I have friends they post on Facebook. My mama is sick in the hospital. She can't breathe. I think she's going. And I'm just trying to post stuff, and then they come right back to me and say, "We took this down."
Your the pilot that passed away. How old was he?
I think he was probably in his early 50s.
Okay. So I want to wrap up today's show with this in mind. One, I want you to know I'm teaming up with a lot of pastors. Are you familiar with Kim Clement? Did you ever hear about Kim Clement, the prophet?
No.
Oh boy! When we get off, I'll text it to you. Okay. But Kim Clement was a gentleman in 2007 who said prophetically that Trump would become a trumpet and that he'd become the president. It's 2007. And a lot of what he's talking about, a lot of what's in the book Isaiah, all these things are all happening. And anyway, Kim and other prophets have talked about how Oklahoma is going to be a place for this great awakening. And we're organizing an event here, and I'll get you the details as soon as I have it. But we have pastors from all over the country that are coming and doing prayer and fasting until the election to awaken America. And there's a big movement happening. It's unbelievable. If you look at the polling numbers right now, how much the black vote is beginning to switch in favor of President Trump. I met Vernon Jones in a limousine in Chicago, and he's a Democrat who's switched in favor of Trump. You've got all these great things happening. I just want to encourage the listeners out there. We have authority over Satan. God gave us authority over Satan. But I want to ask you for the final thought you'd like to share with the people out there. You're in a position of leadership. You've looked at a lot of data. You've looked at a lot of facts. You've talked to a lot of people. You probably have more data than the average person. What would you want to share with our listeners?
I'll tell you something interesting. If you feel frustrated because you can't get a hold of your state or your national representative, here's a trick of the trade. Number one, get to know their chief of staff. Convince them of your plight, of your idea, of your passion, and you may actually change the mind of a senator or president. Number two, on a grassroots level, there are commissioners' courts across America. Every county in America has a commissioners' court with 4 commissioners and a judge. And I'm appealing to them through this podcast and any other way I can to please consider opening up your economies, learning what you can do if people get symptoms that works. It's working 100% of the time on the people that I'm aware of.
100%. Haven't had a death yet.
And commissioners' courts, commissioners are one of the best ways for government when it meets the rubber of the road in local counties. That's how things get done. And I'm appealing to my fellow commissioners and county judges across America to please research this and be brave, be a salmon, go against the stream. And who knows but what God will use you to help save our country. So anyway, I'm so excited about what you're talking about. And I may end up getting to bring Richard and some other people from Midland here to your event.
It's going to be epic. I'm telling you, Pastor Bill Scheer with Guts Church and other leading pastors, Pastor Brian Gibson with his church, mega church pastors are getting behind this. We've got doctors from all over the country, social media influencers, Christians, moms and dads. It's amazing what's happening. It's going to be a great awakening. I'm going to let you know the details as soon as I have them. And again, I just thank you for being on the show today. If people want to learn more about you, do you have a website or someplace people can go to learn more about you, sir?
No, I don't, but I'm pretty easy to reach. Randy Prude, Prude, County Commissioner in Midland, Texas. Very accessible. Lots of ways to get a hold of me. My phone number is listed, and I
got it.
I'm glad to help in any way I can. And by the way, I flew on the plane to Waxahachie last couple weeks ago, Clay, and we had a national conference there, press conference there, with a lot of really good people that you would enjoy. But while I was flying back, Dr. Bartlett gave me a copy of this book, and you probably can't read it this backwards, Journey of a Medicine Man. And that's be a subject for one of your future podcasts, because he has been in some miraculous situations all across the world where he's been trying to help people get well. And so you may want to talk with him about that.
Absolutely. Brother, thank you so much. Again, the County Commissioner for Precinct 4, I believe, in Midland, Texas, Randy Prude. I appreciate you for being on the show. You're not a crazy guy. You're not a conspiracy theory guy. You're not a guy who's always in the media looking for controversy. You're here because you love this country, and we'll be praying for you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Clay. Thank you very much.
Take care. And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!